Hey, y'all, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, this is Joe and Jay Outspoken. Don't forget to follow all of our platforms. You can find them by going to Linktree/Joe and Jay Outspoken. We're on Rumble, Locals, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Today's show is for Tuesday, July 11th. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion on America and why it's going woke. So, Joe, what are we going to be discussing in part two?
Well, in part two of our two-part series, we'll be finishing up our discussion about the Human Rights Campaign and what impacts it has on our nation. Not only with the radical ideas and political influences, but how some of their ideologies create the very same division that they say they're trying to prevent. So don't go anywhere because you'll want to hear about the credit system they use on their manufactured equality indexes.
Wow. How did we get here? Our grandparents are rolling over in their graves. Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are going over part two. If you missed part one, it should be at the end or in the description below. So make sure you check that out. So here we go, Joe. Part two of America the Woke. Where are we going from here?
So last week we talked about HRC and some of the policies they were supporting. We also talked about their charitable arm, the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. We talked about some of the corporate or some of the larger companies that donate to both the HRC and the HRCF. There was another associated organization with them that I didn't mention last week, and that's Zero for Zeros. And that's kind of lead us into our discussion today. So Zero for Zeros is basically, so I know we mentioned about the healthcare. We talked about municipalities and we talked about corporations. They also have a congressional scorecard, right? And they use those to score politicians and as far as their support of the LGBTQ community. So the Zero for Zeros is a group that clearly the zeros indicate that they've scored very poorly on their scorecard. So this organization, what they do is they focus activist campaigns to pressure companies that support like LGBTQ policies to stop contributing to campaigns of candidates that do not align with the ideology positions of the HRC, right? So they're just, these companies are just, these huge corporations, they have lobbyists, right? And these lobbyists are the ones that are, hey, we're cutting off any kind of campaign donations to this candidate because he doesn't see we don't see eye to eye as far as the ideology that the HRC is giving us, right? They also target members of Congress with a HRC score of 0. So that's why it's called Zero for Zeros, right? With companies to refrain from supporting their reelection or donations to their campaigns. And not only their campaigns, but like anything that they support, right? So if the politician supports, I don't know, think of something, Clean Air Act, right? So they won't fund that. They won't fund him. They won't fund his reelection. They literally just cut him off. And not them personally, but they use the companies that they have indexes on to cut them off as far as financially. So again, this is how they operate behind the, I almost want to say the Iron Curtain. This is how they work to keep people from going against their views, really. And it's sad, but this is what we're facing today. So the reason I'm saying that that's going to lead into our conversation today, because the whole scorecard that they have on Congress. So first of all, I want to talk about the Corporate Equality Index, right, or the CEI. There are several criteria. There's 3 criteria, and under each one of those criteria, there's they talk a little bit about what it is that they're asking for. So I want to start off with the Corporate Equality Index. And again, this is a score that they provide these corporations to see where they align in the ideology of the LGBTQ community, right? And they're scored by points, and these points are based on whether you do something or you don't do something, whether you try or you don't try. And then at the end of the year, they're on the the top 100 companies to work that's LGBTQ friendly. You know what I mean? Um, that's what we're saying, but under the table, it's all about the money, right?
Right. Yeah. Contributions.
A
That's what it's all about.
contribution. Yeah, absolutely. So, talking about the CEI, or the Corporate Equality Index, there's three criteria. The first one is workforce protections, right? Which includes sexual orientation and gender identity. So you already see this, right? In the workforce, you already have to go through diversity and inclusion, which talks about those protections. They talk about them like it's a protected class. They don't talk about like, hey, it's suggestive or anything like that. It's a protected class when it comes to corporations. So you have to include that gender identity and the sexual orientation parts in your discussions, right? When you talk about LGBT communities, when you talk about Pride Month, anything like that, those have to be included, right? So you get points if you have that. Criteria number 2 is inclusive benefits. So that includes spousal, medical, and other benefits, right? Domestic partner, medical, and other benefits, and transgender inclusive health insurance. All right. So, of course, with that, and we'll talk about it in the healthcare part of the equality index. What that means that it's what it says, transgender inclusive, right? So you're talking about anything that has to do with um, becoming transgender or being transgender. I don't even know what the proper terms is anymore, to be honest with you, because I feel like I'm walking on
I don't
eggshells.
think most of
So
us do. Well,
the
here's kind of the sad part. They don't either. Because ask them to identify or how many, different genders or sexes or whatever are there, and they can't give an answer. Well, it's limitless. No, it's not limitless. There's a lot of bird species in the world, but it's not limitless. There are only so many physical bird species, right? So you got to come up with a number. Not to hijack on that, we'll get to criteria 3 here in a second, but the inclusive benefits, so spousal, medical, and other benefits, the domestic partner, and all that kind of stuff. These are rights that the original gay rights movement we're trying to do.
Correct.
We talked about this a little bit in part 1,
Yeah.
and I don't think, like, Joe, you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have an issue with that at all.
No.
That's like what they
No.
totally deserve, as a partnership, right? So the marriage thing is a whole different subject through the church and all that, but
Yeah.
these partnerships, like who's to say, like, you and I, when we're 80 years old and we don't have any spouses or whatever, and we're just, we decide to live together, well, why shouldn't we be able to get insurance together and all that kind of stuff? Hopefully we, if there's all the stuff left for us when we get old anyways, but the problem is
no
that
Social Security.
that yeah, there's not going to be any Social Security left. The problem that people are going to find with the transgender thing, like, if somebody's sick, they're sick. That's healthcare, period, right? But when you're talking about, we're going to pay for somebody to have, and this is going to be very controversial, but for you to have an elective surgery, because that's exactly what it is. I don't want the public, my place of business or anything like that, paying for somebody's elective chopping off or adding to. And this has nothing to do with you being transgender. I think if, like, a female wants to enhance herself in some way, that's not something that should be paid for. Now, there are little caveats to this stuff. Somebody has cancer or something like that, and they get reconstruction afterwards. These are completely different situations, right? But this is, again, a slippery slope that we go down, because at that point, well, I'll identify as something and get plastic surgery, right? And have that paid for by the state or by my business. And we can't do that. We can't go down that road, because, I mean, companies already are going out of business. They're already having to pay, minimum wages that are not deserved by a lot of folks, quite honestly. Again, you get hired for a job and you agree to a certain amount of pay. That doesn't mean you get paid more just because you've been there a week and you think you deserve more. You get
Right.
paid based on performance and everything. So I digress. Anyways, yeah. So criteria 2, that was something I did want to point out on there because I think it's
But you're right, because even now with the domestic partner, that's in reference to the LGBT community, because you can't have, like, for example, even if I have, let's say, a girlfriend, right, and we're not married, we're just a couple, that wouldn't qualify for the domestic partner. That's, again,
right.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
only the LGBT community, so
Yeah.
it's already being not so inclusive, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Um, Criteria 3: supporting an inclusive culture and corporate social responsibility. There's that key word again. I know you've heard it before: social responsibility, right?
Responsibility. Yeah.
So, what
Social
that,
credit scores, buddy.
man,
China,
telling you,
China.
yeah.
It
So
comes
what
from
that means, this what
China.
China. So what that means, it's a little bit more intense, right? This one refers to internal educating and training best practices, and I'm not talking about in general. I'm talking about LGBTQ, right? LGBTQ employee resource group or diversity council. Okay. Now again, this is if you want to get points. This is if you want to be recognized, right, by the Human Rights Campaign, right, which has a lot of influence. Keep that in mind. It has a lot of influence. Outreach or engagement with LGBTQ community. Okay. Corporate social responsibilities. Again, social responsibility, right? We're talking about doing things right. And then here's another one: gender transition guidelines. I don't know what that means, but it's in there, right? You get points for
Again, I
that.
don't think they know what that means.
You get points for that. But here's the thing, Jay. Um, and looking at that is like, all right, have like, there's a lot of religious groups, right? There's a lot of things that a lot of different cultures, a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, a lot of just different things out there that people could ask for, right? Like,
Right.
and I'm being a total idiot right now, but like, I'm Mexican, bro. Why can't I have a siesta? You know what I mean? In the middle of the day, I want to have a siesta. We do that. We have little siestas. I'm gonna go take a little nap, re-energize, and then go back to work in the afternoon, right?
I still vote for us celebrating Taco Tuesdays every Tuesday. So there you go.
You're welcome.
Who
Anyway,
doesn't love taco?
but like, why can't Hey, you know what? I don't. We can't have kosher things, right? At a place, we can't. There's so many other things that people could ask for, but we don't, out of just respect for other people, right? And these are
Right.
simple things. These aren't things that are life threatening. These aren't things that I can't live without. These aren't things that These are just things that, hey, it's okay. You don't, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? I have to respect you just as much as you respect me. I'm not going to impose on you anything that's not necessary. But
Yeah.
here we are, right? And corporations they're all in. They're all in, right? Because they want to be part of this corporate social responsibility. They want to be recognized as like, oh, hey, look, we're all inclusive, right? And we're all diverse, right? But what's happening to these world companies? We just had the vice president of diversity and inclusion leave Walt Disney, right?
Yeah.
Um, Word is how horribly they've been doing in the box office. Um, that
Well, yeah.
they went all deep into diversity and inclusion. We included their movies, included the parks, included so many things, and now it's starting to impact the wallet. So what happens when
Right.
your wallet gets impacted? Everything changes, right? Look at what happened to Anheuser Busch, right? Their VP of what was it? Um, Campaign
Yeah.
or ads or whatever. I don't know what she was.
Yeah.
She went it all in with diversity and inclusion, and what happened there, right?
Right.
So they're seeing that, hey, okay, look, I think we're pushing the envelope too much. It's what's happening is what happened back in the '80s when the HRC had to back off a little bit and kind of like slow the roll because okay, we're pushing too much, we're losing credibility, we're losing
Right.
support, we're losing backup. Right now, these companies are starting to see like, wait a minute, I didn't think this was going to go that bad, and guess what? Anheuser-Busch still continues to drop. The sales have not improved. They have not gotten better. I mean, this is going for the long haul. You know, you would think by now they're going to start bouncing back. People are like, okay, it's done. You've learned your lesson. America says, no, not today. You know why? Because it's in our classrooms, it's in our churches, it's in our work, it's in our television, it's in the news, it's everywhere. What is the sexualization of the LGBTQ community? That's what's
Right.
everywhere,
And that's the
and
biggest.
that's going to stop.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing with this whole thing, man. I mean, we've talked about this probably 2 or 3 times in different episodes that we've done, and it really never had anything to do with, the transgender community, folks that and normally when when we were younger, when we thought about the transgenders, the first thing that we thought about was guys that dressed up in drag, right? Drag queens, if you want to call them that, and everybody thought they were cool and they were funny and they were just, they were just doing what they were doing. Nobody cared about that. If you went to a show or something like that, you were going into a bar or whatever it was, where everybody was 21 and over, at least 18, right? And everybody was a consenting adult. I mean, straight people would go to those shows all the time. So it had nothing to do with, everything that's trying to go on now. The problem is this issue came up as soon as you started involving children. And the fact that when this first started, that children weren't, it was being said, well, no, why are you guys scared about it being your kids and all this? And now, most recently, we've had that parade where they were walking down saying, we're coming after your kids, And I mean, was not a fun thing. However, it opened the eyes of a lot of parents on what was going on. And they didn't realize that it wasn't just these last few years. It's been going on for a while, this crazy, weird, like sick indoctrination of kids. And it's like, I don't know what's going on, but it's like it's being doubled down on, right?
Yeah.
They're double downing. And you mentioned Budweiser a few minutes ago. Same thing. They keep doing silly things and it's affecting them. And all they would have had to have really done is come out and apologize and said, listen, we were not, we didn't know that this was something that was going to affect the whole market at large. We, love our community. We love our drinkers, or whatever, however they would say it.
We like our rednecks.
We like our rednecks, whatever. Yeah. And the thing is so their last tweet, right, to when they sent Dylan Mulvaney the cans, and he got a few, these ceremonial cans or whatever. And honestly, if those would have been sent out, that would have never been tweeted out. Nobody would have ever cared, right? But it's because of everything else that's going on that makes it an issue, and so they finally tweeted just this last week here. They've waited all this time. Well, there's too much damage done at this point. Yeah. And the thing is, all these companies that are doing all this stuff, from the Targets to the Kohl's to any other company you can think of, again, nobody would have cared if you didn't start involving children. The fact that Target puts it at the front of their store in where? Their children's department, right? When you walk in the front door, right? Most of the stuff is geared around children, right? Yeah, there's flip-flops, there's stuff for adults and everything. And again, I don't care if adults wear any pride stuff when they're out and about. Good for you. Do your thing. Don't involve children in this. And this is where they can't grasp that is an issue for people. And parents are sick of it. All the mama bears are out there. They're pissed off right now. They're really pissed.
And not just the moms. I think everybody's, had it with that.
Daddy bears too.
And grandparents.
Careful of bears though.
Grandparents, everyone's had it, and it's because it's it just isn't right. Because I mean, if you look at it from just a standard everyday regular run of the mill kind of thing, don't say it's LGBTQ or anything like that, for example, let's take a parade, for example, and we'll get into it in the Municipal Equality Index. But let's take a parade, for example. And this is what, not too long ago, maybe 8 years ago, maybe even 10. If you're out, or maybe even shorter, I don't even know. If you're out riding a bike in a parade naked, what do you think would happen to you?
You would be arrested
For indecent exposure, right? But now you look at these pride parades, and you have old men riding around with their genitalia just hanging out,
And I don't care if they're
because
straight
they're
or,
old. But you got guys in leather chaps with nothing else on. You have children there. I mean, when did the change? When did the laws change, or when did it become normal to accept this? Like anybody, any parent, like gay or not, why would you expose them to something like this? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's the hardest thing that I have to, I guess, that I deal with internally,
right.
is like, how is that okay?
Well, again,
So
it's being pressed on that, you know, if you deny that this is okay, then you're homophobic or something of that, or transphobic.
I'm so over that. I'm so over that, because you know what? There's so many things that happen within the LGBT community that we could say the same thing, right?
Well, again,
they're
man,
they're straight phobic, right? Or,
right.
you know,
Well,
they're
I'm going to tell you right
cis-phobic.
now. Yeah, you mentioned that parade. Okay, I would say I'm heterophobic too, because if it's a straight guy, an old man on a bike with his junk hanging out, I'm going to want him arrested just as much as the guy that's trans, just as much as the guy that's gay, right?
Yeah. So
it's indecent exposure. It doesn't matter how you claim, you're doing something that shouldn't be done in front of kids and in the public eye and everything.
It shouldn't be a protected class, not in that aspect at all.
Not in that aspect.
No. So
I mean, then are we just going to make nudity okay in the streets and people can just walk around nude? I mean, that's, you know, that's the whole thing. You're opening Pandora's box with all this.
I agree. I totally agree. So now let's get into since we're talking about it, let's get into the Municipal Equality Index. Okay. And and they have 5, and they call these their criteria, but they call them scoring criteria, and there's 5 of them. So scoring criteria number 1 is non-discrimination laws. Okay. And that's, and again, these are added points, right? These are things that they want to see. And if you see, you're going to get 3 points for this, or blah, blah, blah. So non-discrimination laws, under that is the all gender single occupancy facilities. You know what that means, right?
So is that like the bathrooms now have to be? Yeah.
So if you're a city, you're a municipality. So we're talking about the cities now, right? If your parks, your city buildings or county buildings, whatever, if they have all gender single occupancy facilities, then you get points for that, right? You're moving up you're in that credit score. Your credit score is going up with the HRC.
Right. And places, I mean, I don't know about all the counties and everything, but I know in, you know, California as a state now has mandated that if you have a single-use restroom, so for people that don't know everything about restrooms, if you have a restroom that has multiple stalls, so it's a female restroom, you got 3 toilets in it, right? That can be designated for females. If it is a restroom that has 1 stall in it and or a stall and a urinal, which would normally in single-use men's restrooms, those now have to be an everybody restroom, you know? So it's the problem with that is that men and women are quite different in how they use the restroom. And, you know, the most women now.
You women nasty.
Well, the thing is that men started using the women's single-use restroom, right? And there's no urinal in there. So what do? They don't lift a seat and they pee on the seat. So now women are going into those restrooms and going, oh man, this is gross that guys are urinating on the seats. Well, you need to stop voting for these people that are putting these stupid rules in place. We didn't have a problem before. The whole issue with it was that transgender folks feel intimidated because they don't know which restroom to go into, right? Or that people will judge them that they use the incorrect restroom. It's a single-use restroom. You can go in whatever you want. Even back in the day, there was a law years ago passed that you can't block somebody from going to a restroom, even if it's the other gender, if it's not in use, because they should be able to use the restroom. So this has never really been an issue, but now again, it's one of these things that is an issue has been created, and you have this group that is trying to fit in to society and want to be a part of it, yet they're alienating everybody around them. And especially, and unfortunately, the group that gets hammered by this the most is women. Like, most guys don't care. If a guy that's trans, I don't even know what the name of it is, but somebody that's a guy that dresses like a female that comes into a men's restroom, we don't care. Do you care, Joe?
They're called a transformer.
That's it. That's the new name. So a transformer coming into a men's restroom, we don't care, do we, Joe? I mean,
No.
And then if a female that wants to dress different or whatever, but it's a biological female comes into a men's restroom, we don't care either.
No.
The problem is when adult men that want to dress up and go into a female restroom, and for the women, it's bad enough. But if you're going in there with one of our little girls, there's going to be a problem.
There's a lot of perversion behind it nowadays. There's just a lot of perversion, and not to say that women aren't perverted or there's not women that are considered pedophiles, because there are also. It's just a perversion. You don't want to see that. That's not normal in our society. Well, our society has always been since the beginning of time is, we take care of our youth. We watch our children. That's what we do. And it's
the dumbest animals on the planet know that there's a male and a female.
Well, clearly not. Transformers.
We're the only species that can't figure it out. Yeah. And I know somebody else is going to go, well, the seahorses, the men or women. It's still, there's only two genders. Okay, so
yeah. So anyway, so going on, continuing on criteria, scoring criteria number one in non-discrimination laws. The other one is protecting youth from conversion therapy. So what they don't want people going out there changing people's mind, because the power's in the numbers, correct? So the more people you have that are LGBTQ or identify as LGBTQ or support LGBTQ, the more power you have, right? Because that's kind of how it works in politics, right? The more influence you have, the more power you have. The more power you have, the more influence you have. So that's important. So they're trying to have, so if your municipality, if your township or your city has laws, and they're calling these non-discrimination laws, if they have laws protecting youth from conversion therapy, then you get more points. You know what's funny about that is that they single out youth. You know what I mean? That's what bothers me, because they know that those are the more influenced part of mankind, or the youth, or the children, or the young kids, right? Because their mind is still developing. There's so many things going on. So shame on you. Anyway, scoring criteria number 2, municipalities as an employer. So what's that mean? It means the city prohibits discrimination in city employment. And again, we're talking about LGBTQ. City requires its contractors to have inclusive non-discrimination policies, right? So if you want to do business with this city, you better make sure that company you're going to hire has inclusive non-discrimination policies, or else you lose points. Your credit goes down, right? You're going to be from a homeowner to a renter. So they don't want that. Municipality is an inclusive workplace. Okay, inclusive, right? Inclusive to them. That's what they're saying. Let's be honest, right? This is what it is. So that's scoring criteria number 2. Scoring criteria number 3, it's called service and programs. Okay. They want, if you have established a human rights commission, you get points for that, right? If you have an LGBTQ liaison to the mayor or city manager's office, you get points for that. Look at that. You want power, boy. You want power. I mean,
everybody does.
I want, you know what? I'm going to call this human rights campaign, saying, could we get like a Mexican liaison to some of these mayors and city managers' offices? I feel we need to be talking to about, because we got these street vendors that get a lot of crap from people. I think I need a Mexican liaison out there at the mayor's office. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the
So
lady I bought my tamales from, they stopped her from doing that. I'm not happy about that, man. Not happy about that.
bad. You better talk to your city. But anyway, um, but here's my thing though. So again, these are not required. These are not like laws or anything, but this is how you score higher on your credit. Okay. Next one is cities expressly prohibiting bullying based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Screw everything else, just on sexual orientation and gender identity. Okay, you can have that kind of bullying, right? You'd think if a campaign that's called human rights would include everybody, not just LGBT community, but that's what they do. Anyway, services to the LGBTQ population who are particularly vulnerable. An example, the LGBTQ youth, LGBTQ elders, LGBTQ homeless people, people who have HIV positive, who are HIV positive or living with AIDS, and the transgender community. So when I say vulnerable, I wonder why they're calling the LGBTQ youth vulnerable. I think they're saying that because they know that they're easily influenced. And I want to take the word away of influence and say manipulated. They're easily manipulated in thinking
Right.
something that, as parents, we think that, hey, you know, I did this, and this. I learned from that. I failed doing this, or I failed doing that. So in our kids, we want to instill something different because clearly that didn't work for me, right? So we're taking it upon ourselves to do the right thing, right? Um, and that's how we influence our children. That's how we raise kids, and they know this, right? The trans understand this, and that's why they drive at impacting those youth because they're so vulnerable in their thinking.
Yeah.
Because they're not fully developed. They're still learning. They're still trying to grasp. Look, man, I'm 50 plus years old and I'm still trying to grasp society, right? I'm still trying to understand. Like, I'm totally
Being
confused with
generous.
this. Yeah. What'd you say? What'd you say?
You're being
Anyway,
generous.
I'm still trying to grasp simple things because you see how life is, man. Especially now, life changes immediately. Things
Right.
move at a very high pace, and I'm trying to wrap my head around things. Could you imagine today's youth having to deal with the stuff that we dealt with as youth, and on
There's
top of
so
that,
much stuff coming at them at
oh yeah,
light speed, man. So much stuff.
yeah,
Social media. I mean, and they're given this false sense of everything, because everybody that's on, and I don't want to pick on any one, social media program, but like TikTok in a particular, Instagram a little bit, they're everybody on there flies in jets, lives on these beautiful islands.
yeah. Most of them are
All the
fake.
people are all the people are in shape, and everybody's beautiful and tan and everything, and everybody's got Lamborghinis, and it's crazy.
Yeah,
And so many young kids, the rate has went up exponentially, especially in the last few years, and that rate unfortunately is highest in the LGBTQ community, right? And which is really disturbing. I mean, why is that happening so much? Well, because there's so much so they deal with everything that, um heterosexual or cis kids, whatever you want to call them, are dealing with. Plus they're dealing with all the stuff that, that these other folks are pumping into them as far as it being, correct, or, yes, this is the direction you need to go as far as transitioning and such.
right.
And then they have to deal with friends at school or family, or what have you. So it's a lot. It is a lot for anybody to have to deal with. And I hate to I I hate it for the kids that are having to deal with all this stuff, and gosh, their poor parents and family members that are having to go through it too.
So let me tell you something. I don't know if this has to do with. I know you gave me a stat, but I just looked it up. The rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged white men. So in 2021, white males accounted for 69.68% of suicides in 2021. So
Wow.
I don't know if it's the LGBT community, but Man, you guys, I feel bad for you guys. You guys are, you guys are getting the worst end of everything. But anyway, moving on to this criteria here. That's horrible, man. I'm
We're
laughing at because I'm making
I'm
fun
at
of.
fault for everything, and I need to off myself for it too.
Oh my god, that's crazy. That's crazy. So
I'm
I don't
kidding
know.
everybody. Disclaimer: I'm good. I'm going to be on this rock a little while longer. Joe and I got a lot to say.
Oh, we got too much to say sometimes. Anyway, so here's scoring criteria number 4. All right, law enforcement. Dun dun dun. All right, so what do they want? They want an LGBTQ police liaison, right? Come on, man. Mexicans don't get one. Why does the
Hate.
LGBTQ get one? I want one.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
That's crazy.
as much as the police have been in the news, and the last pretty much since 2008, and you can deduct why that happened at that time, but um, you would think there would be other groups that would get a liaison much before that, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Because
That's
there's
not
been so many
happening.
complaints.
Yeah.
And it's not happening for them. So why would it happen for this group?
So the next one for that is responsible reporting of hate crimes, including for hate crimes based on sexual orientation and gender identity to the FBI, which it is getting done, but they feel like it's not. And the reason they keep saying that is because it's one of the lowest. Sexual orientation, gender identity crimes are low in comparison to other crimes.
I can imagine.
Scoring criteria number 5, leadership on LGBTQ equality. So not of the group, but in leadership in the city. So city leadership public statements on matters of equality, particularly where the city leadership pushes for equality in the face of substantial adversity, right? Or so when they're like even if they know something's not going to get passed because it's just kind of crazy law that the LGBTQ community wants, they still want them to push it. So if you push it and you're persistent, you get points for that. Okay. Persistence of city leadership in pursuing legislation or policies that further equality, right? Openly LGBTQ people holding elected or appointed office in the municipality, right? So attempts to pass LGBTQ inclusive laws or policies against state law restrictions.
Yeah. So the previous one you went over, people holding elected or appointed offices.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't have any issue with any of them holding those offices if they're the best person for the position, if they're the qualified for the position, all those kind of things. Somebody being put into one of those positions just because of that reason, it doesn't. If every single person in my community leadership is Mexican, if they're all Asian, if they're all any one group, I don't pick a group, and they're the best people for that community, I'm going to be completely satisfied with the choices based on they have the right qualifications to do whatever that job is.
I don't know if you picked up on that key word in there before that. It said openly LGBTQ people.
Oh yeah,
openly. So if you're in the closet, they don't want you in there. They want someone who's going to be loud and proud. You know what I mean?
Right.
Being LGBTQ is not enough. Isn't that weird? That's weird. So anyway,
it is pretty weird.
Yeah. So now to the final equality index, healthcare. You're going to like this one. All right. So criteria number 1. Let's get into it. Criteria number 1, non-discrimination and staff training. So they want patient non-discrimination, right? Which I don't think I've ever seen. Equal visitation, employment non-discrimination, and staff training. Criteria number 2, patient services and support, right? LGBTQ patient services and support. They want just specific LGBTQ.
Right.
Transgender patient services and support. So I don't understand why they want 2. I mean, I thought the LGBTQ is part of, or transgender was part of the LGBTQ. They should take the T away if they're going to have a whole separate thing. You know what I mean? I don't understand. Anyway,
right.
But they're specific. They're very specific. They want the LGBTQ patient service and support. And then if you have a transgender patient service support, you get another point or another 3 points. Right?
Yeah.
So they do this. Let me tell you why they do this. Because that first one should cover transgender, but they're trying to like be more like, hey, you get more points if you actually have a transgender one. You know, that's
Right.
what they're doing. They're not dumb. They're not dumb.
Yeah, you get 1 point for LGBTQ, you get 2 points for transgender.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's points associated with these, but I didn't really grind them down because I didn't. The math, it was too complicated for me. Patient
Again, they don't know.
yeah, patient self-identification, right, and medical decision making. Okay. Criteria number 3: employee benefits and policies. Employee benefits and policies that is specific and inclusive to LGBTQ. Transgender
Yeah.
inclusive health insurance, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, these things that you've been reading, most of this, to be honest with you, most of the stuff seems pretty reasonable. Other parts of it seem
the
totally
majority are ridiculous, bro. The majority are ridiculous.
It's
I'm just going to tell you. To me, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, because you're trying to say that, well, you know, as a transgender person, you deserve better treatment. You know, first class treatment. You deserve to come through the door first. All these kind of things.
Yeah.
That's just not the case.
No.
Everybody needs so exactly like you said at the opening of this episode, that we're trying to create this whole thing where everybody's inclusive, yet you're making it exclusive.
You're dividing,
for one group and not another. So
let me get the last one. I got one more. The criteria 4 is patient community engagement, right? So this is, and again, these are all LGBTQ specific. The reason I wanted to finish up real quick is because I do want to say something, and I think you agree with me, is that in no way do we want anyone to think that we support any kind of hate or violence towards the LGBTQ community, because that's not what we believe in. That's not what we stand for. But we do but what we want people to understand is that in an effort to create equality, or the LGBT community to create equality, they are dividing the nation, right? Because they want to be able to say, hey, this is just for us, and this, and you have to obey this, and this is the law, and blah blah. But there are so many different types of people on the face of the earth that and just in the United States alone, that you can't do that. You can't do that. It's I heard someone say the other day, and I can't take the credit for it, but I wish I would have thought of it. They're saying, like, that you have a flag for the LGBTQ, you have a flag for this, and you have a flag for, that even the whole LGBT at one point had different flags, right? I think you and I saw that one time.
Right.
And someone said, like, why do we need so many flags? There goes like, well, because we need flags to represent, certain people in the United States. And they said, we do have a flag. There is a flag. He goes, that one. He goes, that flag represents the American citizens, the U.S.
Right.
We're all Americans. We all fly under that banner. That's the only flag we need, right? And I when I heard that, I'm like, they're right. That we have a flag that represents us all, every single one, LGBT, Hispanic, white, black, Asian, everybody who is an American is represented by that flag. Every single one of us. Why do we need multiple flags? We don't. We really don't need a flag, because that's our flag, and we should not. And I know a lot of people say, like, well, it's a thin blue line flag. That's, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's the American flag. There's an American flag there. Yes, it represents the thin blue line, right? The brothers in blue, right? They also have one for the brothers in red, in gray, and yellow. I mean, they have them for almost every single first responders out there, right? And why not? It's still the American flag. They didn't create a brand new flag. They didn't put nothing special on it. There's no, you know what I mean? It's still the same flag. Whether they put a blue line through it, a red line through it, a gray line, a yellow line, it doesn't matter. It's still the American flag, and that what represents our people, right? American citizens. But I don't want people to think that we're anti-LGBTQ and that we're this and that. The whole purpose of this is to show that they are trying so hard to be inclusive, that they're creating exclusivity. You know what I mean? They're being
Right.
they're excluding everybody else, and they're creating this one humongous, I don't know what to call it, race, um, sexual orientation. I don't know what it is anymore at this point, Jay. I don't know.
Well, well, there's, if you think about through history, more recently, and people have talked about them quite a bit in modern history, but it goes a little bit farther back. And I know there's people that try to claim they're part of the group, but it's not what it once was, is the KKK, and what did they try to do? They tried to make white superiority. They tried to make it where, white folks had all these advantages and stuff. And you could talk to people of other racial groups and they're going to say, well, gosh, why would they do that? White people already have an advantage, right? That's the saying now anyways, because those people at that time felt that they didn't have an advantage. They felt that they were being left behind. And they created their own little group. And what did that do? That alienated them 100% from the rest of the country. So people that were of different races and different ideologies and beliefs, but even people within their own race. I mean, you today go and ask a person of white skin color, European descendant, what they think about the KKK. I can tell you right now, 99.9% of them are going to go, those people are ignorant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you step it back farther to, like in Germany in the 1940s, and when Hitler took power and everything, what did he do? He was trying to, now there's a lot of things that went on with that, with the Treaty of Versailles and everything that created a lot of the mess that was going on. But you had a man that created this want from this group of people, right, to better themselves. That's what they were ultimately trying to do. They were in a horrible depression in their country, and they were trying to better themselves. And what did they do? They alienated themselves from the rest of the world, right? Because of the ideology that they had. And so this is, again, that slippery slope, that Pandora's box that the LGBTQ community needs to be very careful of, and opening to create this whole thing that will alienate the rest of the country. Up until this point, until children were being involved in all this kind of weird stuff, in parades and everything, I think there was a lot of progress made within their own community, and where, people in jobs and everything didn't really care what they did. And again, we've said it over and over. I'm like a broken record with this. You and I have been friends with tons of folks, right? Either in the past or still. And
that wasn't ever a topic of discussion or of like, oh my God, you're gay, or I mean, it's like we talk to them as if we were just talking to a woman or another guy. We were just like friends. We're like, I don't care what, and that's what made it. So here's the thing: the LGBT community is a major supporter of the left. Correct? Am I right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So what does the left do? What are they good at? Dividing the nation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
That's the.
So what do you think the LGBT
thing.
community is doing? They're dividing the nation. It's not enough to divide each other, right? Between beliefs and non-beliefs, but now they're dividing children with their parents.
Yeah.
And that's why they're going after them. So it's important to know that the left is feeding into the LGBTQ, and the LGBTQ is feeding into the left.
Right. And one of the things I'll leave it with this is that, there's big groups of folks that are part of the LGBTQ community that are completely walking away from all this stuff.
Absolutely.
They fought for,
they got hijacked,
their rights and everything, and they got hijacked. Absolutely. And they're tired of it. There's a lot of groups out there, and we'll probably put some links and stuff up, if you guys want to check them out. But it's amazing people, and we stand behind them 100% because
Absolutely.
they want this country to be, unified, not divided. We're going to be a stronger country. We can do better. We can, help more people. The thing is if our country's in shambles, and I'm not in agreement with the whole Ukraine thing, but if you want to help people in other countries, you want to help other people in our own country, all these kind of things, what is necessary? We have to have a strong economy, and we have to have people that can work together to help these other people or these
Yeah,
other
absolutely.
communities or other countries. When we're divided, our efforts are going to be divided. So the thing is, we are most powerful when we are together and working together. So, listen, everybody, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I'm Jay, and that's Joe. And this has been Joe and Jay Outspoken. If you had fun or learned anything, do us a favor, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Those things really help us out and fight the algorithm that may not always agree with the topics we cover. Today's probably one of those. If there's a topic you would like to see us cover in the future, let us know at joeandjayproductions.com/ideas. If you would like to help the cause, it can be as small as liking, subscribing, and commenting. You can also grab merch from the Outspoken store or become one of our Patreon members. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Take care of one another.
And remember, do better, be better.
And as always,
God bless America.